vais essayer d'être à la hauteur de notre présentation.
Welcome, everyone, to the Explorers Club. This is going to be a really quick introduction, as we have a long program ahead for you tonight. So good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Explorers Club. It's so wonderful to be here all together this evening with folks flying in from all over the world, including we had 6 magnificent birds that are visiting with us as well. And thank you to Brian and Teddy from Sky Hunters in Flight for bringing them and sharing them with us this evening. I want to introduce you to Heather Muhlman, who's here with me. Muhlman, who's the VP of Development for the Peregrine Fund, who's going to be doing some of the introductions. But I also want to introduce you to Bryce Berger. Bryce over here is going to be our interpreter for the night. Bryce is a French citizen now living in New York for the last 12 years. He's a member of the Explorers Club since 2016. He's passionate about science and exploration and enjoys traveling the world in search for wild places. I can attest to that because we were on an expedition together in the Galapagos. And he certainly was diving deep with those, all the different types of sharks that are down there. He's actually working in the financial world, and I think he's going to do a wonderful job. He was together with Lily on Saturday, so they've gone over this a few times, and I think it's going to be a fabulous program. So Heather, come on and take over.
I was explaining to someone earlier today that I'm an introvert, so this is going to be fun. My name's Heather Muehlman. I'm traveling here from Boise, Idaho, and I work for the Peregrine Fund. I just want to say a few thank yous tonight to Jenna and to Anne for putting this on in the Explorers Club. We're very excited to be here. I want to thank Doreen Oskay, who did a whole lot of work from the Peregrine Fund to make this event happen, so a big thank you to her. We have a lot of our leadership here tonight, and if you didn't have a chance to meet them before, hopefully you'll have a chance after this meeting. I also want to recognize our board chairman, Carter Montgomery, who is here from Dallas, Texas, and a number of board members, Ginny Carter, right in front of my face, and a special board member here tonight who I'm here to introduce. So he was a U.S. Senator for Idaho. He was the governor of Idaho and then served as the Secretary of Interior. And we are honored to have him here to introduce our president and CEO, the Honorable Dirk Kempthorne.
Heather, thank you very much. And to Anne and to Jenna, thank you for having us. This is a distinct privilege to be at the Explorers Club here in New York City. And to see this magnificent room filled is very impressive. Bless all of you. And I see one of the youngest, Sebastian, who's here, one of your student explorers. That's really great. I know that one of your honorary presidents was John Glenn. And I served with John on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Someday, in another setting, I've got some good stories for you, okay? But it's been suggested that I make a comment or two because of your iconic polar bear that's right out there. And I'm going to tell you a little background that probably very few people know about. When I became Secretary of the Interior, I inherited the issue of whether or not it should be listed as an endangered species. I didn't necessarily want the issue, but I suddenly owned it. And for the next number of months, I would be invited to the White House, to the Roosevelt Room, and I would be seated with advisors. They never gave me the courtesy of letting me bring any member of my staff with me, principal only. And they made it extremely clear I was not to list that bear under any circumstance. Dale Hall, who was the director of the Fish and Game within Interior, who is also now a member of the board, he had recommended that it should be listed. I asked Mark Myers of the U.S. Geological Survey, Dr. Myers, what is your recommendation to me? He too is in Interior. He said, sir, I don't know. I said, that's a heck of a thing to tell me on an issue of this magnitude. He said, I've not been given direction that I'm to do the study. I said, get going. 1 month later, I received probably a 500-page summation. I'm not a biological scientist. I'm a political scientist. But I read every page. Sometimes I had to read one page 2 or 3 times. Okay? And I had NASA photographs of the polar ice cap. I see in your then and now level up here, and I saw some of the glaciers. That's what I was looking at. So at a particular point, I called the White House Chief of Staff, Josh Bolton. I said, Josh, it's time for a decision. He said, I agree. Can you come over immediately? I said, yes. I was whisked to the White House, West Wing, went into Josh's office. He asked Joel Kaplan, he said, Joel, would you please excuse us? And then he closed the door. He said, I don't want any witnesses. I said, I agree. I said, Josh, I know the decision you want. You have made it painfully clear to me. But I cannot and I will not give you that decision. I said, I did not resign as the governor of a sovereign state to come here and have a bunch of advisors with no real world experience tell me what I'm to rubber stamp. I will not do it. But you have every right to have somebody in my position carry out your orders. He probably suspected, but I had a letter of resignation in my pocket. And it was not acidic. It was laudatory to the president and to Laura Bush. He said, I do not know what to do. I am stumped. I'm going to take it to the President of the United States tonight, and you must be fully prepared to be fired in the morning. That's how we left it. And let me tell you this, new friends. I slept soundly that night because I was at peace. Had I caved in and know that in 48 hours I'd walk to some podium and read words I did not believe, I would never be at peace again. So anyway, the next morning, and now I will quote, direct quote, President George W. Bush, I am inclined to agree with my advisors, but what is most important to me is the comfort of my secretary. He backed me 100%. And I listed that magnificent bear as a threatened species with all the elements that go with that. That's why it's not really an issue anymore. But it's why I'm proud to be a member of the Peregrine Fund, because they know how to stand up and do what's right, and I like that. I think I'm in a room of people that know how to stand up and do what's right. You are explorers. And the spirit that's in this room, I'm impressed with. We're going to hear in just a moment from our absolute wonderful keynote speaker. I will also just say this. When you talk about the Peregrine Fund and the Peregrine Falcon, you see them from time to time on these high-rises, or you see them in the Grand Canyon. I'm going to tell you, it's a 99% probability that those are progeny from those peregrines that we released in Idaho. That's what we do. That's what they do. I'm on the board. I'm not going to take credit that's not due. So let me just say this. It was in 1992 that analysis was done of Madagascar. Significant raptors were in peril. 1992, the Peregrine Fund said, we must do something about this. One of the first young men that stood up and said, I will help, was a local, okay? Lily-Arison Rene de Roland. Not bad, right? How'd I do, Bryce?
That's pretty good.
Merci beaucoup. Later, Bryce will interpret for me. But this young man, 8 years later, became a PhD. He is a man who believes what we believe in at the Peregrine Fund, and that is that you take wildlife and people and you make them partners and achieve great results. He has now mentored 108 young people, of which 16 are now PhDs, 90 now have masters, and 2 are professors. He discovered a duck in Madagascar that was thought to be extinct for years. He has now found the duck. They also found a spider that no one had ever seen before, so they named it after him. Yeah. It's called Catobleps Lily-Arison. Pretty close? Yeah. That's why we have Bryce here tonight, okay? All right. But anyway, I'd just say, this is a man that inspires us, okay? Another man that inspires us is the gentleman I'm going to introduce, who will then introduce Lily. And that is our president CEO, Chris Parrish, who I think personifies. He exudes the whole spirit of the Peregrine Fund. And that is that he has this dogged determination combined with humility. He is an intellect who is savvy and can talk the street talk. He is someone that if you say that cannot be done, he says watch. It is someone that's leading the Peregrine Fund magnificently. This man is also bringing back the recovery of the condor. I had the honor as Secretary of the Interior to delist the American bald eagle. Can you imagine if we had lost America's icon? We did not, and we intend to not lose raptors. With that, I introduce our leader, Chris Parrish.
Everybody, we're going to bring in my buddy who's been fidgeting around out there a little bit.
I was just going to say that. We have somebody that wants to fly in.
Yeah, we got somebody who wants to come in here and join us real quick. I'd like your help. We use verbal cues when we train some of the birds, and his verbal cue is his name. His name is Daredevil. So when I count to 3, everybody, Daredevil, okay? It'll get his attention to this side of the room. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Well, I know what you're expecting to hear, and that's how do you follow that? Well, we're here tonight to celebrate one of our champions, and we're awfully grateful to be able to share this all with you. And gosh, Dirk, you did it all. You said it all. But I'm going to reiterate a few things, and it's about telling the story. We say at the Peregrine Fund that the Peregrine Fund is its people. And really, conservation is its people. You know, for most of my life growing up, I heard about all the problems we were responsible for. I rarely heard about solutions, about the fact that we, too, are the solutions. This is about exploration in time, in space, and in knowledge. But once you understand a system, and this is what makes the Peregrine Fund's relationship to the recovery of the Peregrine Falcon unique. We were founded by falconers, hunters, founded by people who not only had the scientific prowess and understood these systems and these organisms, but they understood the birds on their fist, as you just saw magnificently demonstrated there. And those birds work for a living in the wild. They are the epitome of success. To know a landscape and to know a system through a species like that on your fist is to understand something that you can't get out of the textbooks. You combine that with the scientific knowledge and the dogged determination, and you have success. This is the story that we want to tell, whether it's the Peregrine Falcon, the bald eagle, the California condor on deck, or a species in Madagascar like we're going to hear about. We have a connection to the Explorers Club. Bill Burnham, our longest tenured president that we lost in 2006. He was with the Peregrine Fund for 32 years, almost the entirety. We're celebrating our 53rd year today, and yet very few people know about the Peregrine Fund. The Peregrine Fund is its people, and Bill Burnham was honored with the Lowell Thomas Award in 2004. And I just learned today that this beautiful place was donated to the Explorers Club by Lowell Thomas. Learning happens forever. It's fantastic. It isn't enough just to understand the problem. It's understanding how we solve the problem. It's what we do with what we know. Building tomorrow's conservation leaders while saving birds today. Because without tomorrow's conservation leaders, it won't be perpetuated. We can't lose our history, and we can't lose those important lessons. We have to share that information with the next generation and the next generation and give them hope through the examples that we leave them. Lily embodies this spirit, and as was mentioned, was one of our first students in 1992. He oversees currently a crew of 43 individuals, And we like to say at the Peregrine Fund, yes, we're small, yes, we're nimble, but we hit above our weight. And that's exactly what this man embodies. We say, commonly we say, especially when you come into new positions, and you say we stand on the shoulders of giants. Ladies and gentlemen, this, Lily, is your giant. Lily, please come present to these fine people.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir. C'est un grand honneur pour moi de vous présenter aujourd'hui mon parcours dans le cadre de mes recherches et de mon travail dans la conservation de la biodiversité.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. So it's a great honor for Dr. Lily to be here tonight to present the journey of his career and work and research on the conservation of Madagascar biodiversity.
Avant d'entrer dans le plus vif du sujet, permettez-moi de vous présenter brièvement le projet The Peregrine Fund.
So before getting into the heart of the matter, Lily would like to briefly introduce the Peregrine Fund, which has been the cradle of his entire career.
Le projet The Peregrine Fund est fondé en 1970 dans le cadre de conserver une espèce de faucon qui est classée en danger, c'est le faucon pèlerin.
So the Peregrine Project Fund was funded in 1970 in the United States in order to protect the Peregrine Falcon, which was an endangered species at this time.
Grâce aux efforts déployés par les agents du Peregrine Fund, par le programme d'élevage en captivité et de relâchement plus de 4000 individus dans la nature, cette espèce est sortie de la classe des espèces menacées en 1999.
So thanks to the efforts of all the project agents through the captive breeding and the release of more than 4,000 individuals into their natural habitat, the Peregrine Falcon was removed from the endangered species list in 1999.
Les mêmes programmes ont été appliqués pour deux espèces de rapaces qui est classées très menacées, dont le falcon d'aplomado et le condor de Californie.
So the same program was applied to two other endangered species, which are the aplomado falcon and the California condor.
Le projet Peregrine Fund s'est ensuite installé dans plusieurs pays, dont en Amérique centrale, en Amérique du Sud, en Asie, en Afrique, dont Madagascar, qui est le sujet de ma présentation aujourd'hui.
The Peregrine Fund was then established in several other countries and continents, in Central America, in South America, in Asia, in Africa, and in 1992 it was established in Madagascar.
Les oiseaux ont été une de mes passions depuis mon tendre enfance, pendant lequel je ne connais pas bien donc leur importance, mais j'ai déjà attiré par les oiseaux.
So birds have always been one of Lily's passions since his childhood. During his holidays, he loved to watch birds in the rice fields, and he didn't know at that time their importance, but he knew he liked it.
Le mois de juin 1992 a débuté donc mes carrières dans le cadre de la recherche quand j'ai rencontré le directeur de Peregrine Fund en Afrique et il m'a proposé donc un sujet pour mon DEA ou Masters.
So June 1992 was the beginning of his career when he met the director for the Peregrine Fund in Africa and he proposed to Dr. Lily a project for his master's degree research.
Juste quelques jours après notre rencontre, je suis parti pour passer 3 mois dans la partie ouest de Madagascar pour localiser donc une espèce de rapace qui est classée en danger critique, l'aigle pêcheur de Madagascar, parmi les 5 espèces les plus menacées en Afrique.
So just a few days after starting his job, he left to spend 3 months in the central western part of Madagascar. as you can see on the map, to locate all possible places where you could find a very endangered bird. That's a fish eagle of Madagascar, and it's one of the most endangered species that you can find in Africa.
En septembre 1992, j'ai donc visité la partie nord-est de Madagascar, où on peut trouver donc la forêt de basse altitude de grande taille, et j'ai consacré 6 mois pour la recherche de la communauté des rapaces dans cette partie.
So in September of that same year, he devoted 6 months of study in the northeast of the Madagascar island to observe, to go to some low altitude forests and observe a community of birds of prey that live in this specific area.
Et pendant ce temps, j'ai donc utilisé 2 méthodes pour observer les oiseaux de proie. La première méthode, c'est de voir donc les oiseaux à partir de la canopée, où j'ai monté donc au sommet de la canopée de grands arbres pour voir les espèces aériennes et aussi les espèces de sous-bois en utilisant donc le transect.
So he used 2 different techniques to study those birds. The first one was like building observation platforms directly on the canopy to study the species and the birds that live high in the trees. And the second technique was by studying the transect for birds living lower in the canopy, lower in the forest.
Ces expériences de terrain ont développé donc le goût de recherche en moi, et j'ai consacré 7 mois par an dans la forêt pour voir donc les espèces forestières le long de la côte de Madagascar et surtout dans la presqu'île de Massoal.
So these field experiments developed his taste for research, and following those, he devoted every year 7 months a year in the forest to study birds, especially in the Massaola Peninsula forest.
Et l'objectif de mes recherches pendant les 7 mois, pendant les 6 ans, est de chercher, de retrouver encore 2 espèces d'oiseaux qui ont été observées pour la dernière fois vers les années 1930.
And so the main objective of the beginning of his career and research was to try to find and identify 2 species of raptors that were last identified in 1930.
Et dans le cadre de mes recherches pour l'obtention du diplôme de master en 1994, j'ai étudié donc les techniques, l'efficacité des techniques pour le recensement des rapaces.
So, as part of his research for his master's degree, he started studying raptor census techniques.
Et j'ai défendu donc mon doctorat en 2000 en étudiant la comparaison sur 3 espèces d'accipitaires, donc sur l'étude biologique et l'étude écologique.
So later on, for his doctorate degree, he conducted comparative studies of the biology and ecology of 3 species of accipiter birds.
Et en 2010, j'ai présenté donc mon ASDR habilité à diriger des recherches dont le thème est que les oiseaux de proie est un outil de conservation.
And in 2010, for his postdoc degree, he demonstrated that birds of prey can be used as conservation tools.
L'année 2004, j'ai été promu au poste de directeur national du projet The Peregrine Fund.
And in 2004, he was promoted to the position of national director of the Peregrine Fund for Madagascar.
Et depuis les années où j'ai fait des recherches et j'ai promu au poste de directeur national du projet Peregrine Fund à Madagascar, toutes mes actions sont dirigées sur 3 ambitions. Donc, ma première ambition, comment donc conserver la biodiversité, vu que j'ai vu donc la dégradation de l'habitat à Madagascar et aussi les menaces pesantes sur l'espèce. Donc, ma première inspiration, c'est que comment conserver donc la biodiversité.
Donc toutes ces actions, sorry. Oh, sorry. I mean, I'm so much into the presentation that so all these actions have been guided by 3 ambitions, and the first one being the conservation of biodiversity, which is first to understand the ecology and biology of the species, and then to learn how to protect their habitats.
Ma seconde ambition, c'est l'appui à la communauté locale. nous connaissons que, comme un pays sous-développé comme Madagascar, la plupart de la population locale dépend donc des ressources naturelles. Donc, je vais essayer donc d'appuyer la population pour que ces gens-là ne puissent pas dépendre donc sur les ressources naturelles.
So his second ambition is to support the local community, and the main goal here is to reduce the local community's dependence on the local natural resources.
Et ma troisième ambition, c'est de soutenir donc les jeunes chercheurs pour devenir donc les leaders en conservation.
And his final ambition is to support the training of young researchers to ensure like the succession and to ensure new people are ready to take on this project. And those three ambitions are going to be really the core of the presentation tonight.
Donc, je vais prendre un à un donc mes trois ambitions. Donc, je vais commencer sur la conservation de la biodiversité.
So we are going to start with the first ambition, first aspiration, which is biodiversity conservation.
Donc, j'ai étudié donc plusieurs espèces des oiseaux de proie ou des autres espèces, mais je vais prendre donc quelques exemples pour montrer qu'est-ce que nous avons fait sur la conservation de ces espèces.
So he studied like numerous species, like 23 species of raptors in Madagascar, and he's going to go through a few of them to illustrate his research.
Donc, je vais montrer ici donc l'aigle serpenteur de Madagascar. Cette espèce, comme je vous ai dit tout à l'heure, donc, c'est une espèce où la dernière observation, c'était en 1930.
So the first raptor we're going to talk about is a serpent eagle of Madagascar, which was last observed in 1930.
Et en janvier 1994, après avoir installé donc plusieurs filets à l'intérieur de la forêt, nous avons eu de la chance de capturer cette espèce en janvier 1994.
And it was rediscovered by Dr. Lily in 1994 after a lot of years trying to find it and placing some nets in the forest. They were able to find it in 1994.
Et son nid a été découvert 3 ans après, c'est-à-dire en 1987. Et c'est à partir de ce moment-là que nous avons donc étudié sa biologie et l'écologie. Et ces deux données sont très importantes pour avoir des idées sur la conservation de cette espèce.
So 3 years after finding it in 1994, so in 1997, they eventually found the nest, and finding the nest is very important in order to study the ecology and biology of the bird. So it's a very critical thing to find the nest.
Et ce matin, j'étais très content quand j'ai visité donc le Muséum naturel d'histoire ici à New York avec mon collègue, de trouver le spécimen de cette espèce. Et quand j'ai regardé la note sur le spécimen, j'ai vu que la date était 1930. Donc ça, c'est l'oiseau où j'ai vu donc dans les références avant, c'était en 1930 le dernier spécimen. Donc j'étais très content de voir et de prendre dans ma main l'espèce où était classée, où était observée pour la dernière fois en 1930 au niveau du muséum ici à New York.
So this morning, Dr. Lily went to the American Museum of Natural History, and he went to the conservation department, and he asked for the serpent eagle, and they were able to find a specimen that they have at the American Museum of Natural History of this specific bird from Madagascar. And there was a label on the specimen from the date it was retrieved, and that was 1930, which is exactly the date that Dr. Lily knew in his research as being the last time the bird had been seen.
La deuxième espèce, c'est l'hibou rouge. L'hibou rouge est une espèce la plus marquante dans ma vie de la recherche. Pourquoi? Ça, c'est l'oiseau le plus important dans ma vie. Le jour où nous avons donc redécouvert dans la nature, donc nous avons essayé de capturer l'espèce. Et après avoir capturé l'espèce, nous avons pris donc les notes. Et quand j'ai écrit donc la date de l'observation dans mon carnet, et c'est dans ce temps que je vois que c'est la date de mon anniversaire. Donc, je ne connais pas donc que ce jour-là est la date de mon anniversaire, mais c'est juste après la notification de la date d'observation où c'est la date de mon anniversaire. Donc, ça, c'est comme un cadeau pour moi.
So the second bird Lily would like to talk about is a red owl of Madagascar, and it's for him the most important bird and discovery in his career. And so when they were researching for the bird, I mean, they spent a lot of time on the field researching, and the day they found it, when he was taking notes about the finding, that's when he wrote the date of the day he found that he realized it was actually his birthday that day. And like all his time researching made him even forget it was his birthday that day. And so that's one of the reasons it remains a very important bird in his life.
Et l'année suivante, nous avons donc découvert le nid de cette espèce. Ça, donc, le premier nid pour cette espèce. Et à partir de ce moment-là que nous avons essayé donc d'étudier sa biologie et son écologie.
And so the next year, after placing some radio transmitter on the first bird that they have found, they eventually found the nest. And as mentioned earlier, finding the nest is very critical in studying the ecology and the biology of those birds.
La troisième espèce, c'est l'aigle à pêcheur de Madagascar. Comme je vous ai dit tout à l'heure, donc pendant 3 mois en 1992, j'ai cherché donc tous les couples de cette espèce, mais en 1995 et en 2000, j'ai donc consacré 2 mois sur terrain pour faire l'observation de cette espèce le long de la côte ouest de Madagascar.
So the third bird we're going to talk about is a Madagascar fish eagle, and for 2 years, spaced with 5 years, he spent 2 months on the west coast of Madagascar trying to find this eagle.
Nous avons étudié aussi la biologie de cette espèce et je vais vous montrer donc le comportement de cette espèce. Les 2 sexes participent donc à l'incubation des œufs et nous avons capturé presque tous les individus pour mettre donc les bagues pour identifier les espèces. Et pendant la ponte de cette espèce, le nombre des œufs varie de 1 à 2. Et si le nombre des œufs est de 2, l'éclosion se produit donc, l'éclosion de deuxième œuf se produit 3 jours avant le premier. Et dans ce cas donc, il y a donc une compétition de nourriture entre les 2 poussins et 12 jours ou 14 jours après l'éclosion du deuxième poussin, le deuxième devient mort, vu qu'il y a donc une compétition de nourriture entre les deux poussins.
So, a couple of things on the Madagascar fish eagle. So the first thing is that it's both the male and the female. So that's the call of the fish eagle. Would not translate this one. And the first specificity is that it's the eggs are incubated by both the male and the female. And the second specificity is that there usually is like from 1 to 2 eggs in the nest. And when there are 2 eggs, the first one will hatch 3 days before the other one. And when the second one arrives, there's going to be competition for food between the 2 little birds, and the second one usually gonna die. And part of the program, Dr. Lily told me, was to remove the second one and help it hatch separately to help grow the species.
J'ai étudié aussi le busard de Madagascar. C'est une espèce en danger et cette espèce utilise donc les marécages et les savanes comme habitat naturel.
So another species that Dr. Lily studied was the Madagascar buzzard. That he studied he made some census of the species throughout the Madagascar island, and it lives more specifically in some marshes area as well as some savanna areas.
Et j'ai fait donc le recensement de cette espèce dans tout Madagascar en 2005 et 2006. Et j'ai commencé dans la partie sud de Madagascar. Et en 2006, Quand je suis venu donc dans la partie nord et nous avons suivi un endroit où nous avons pensé donc qu'il y a donc cette espèce, mais en suivant cette direction, j'ai vu que l'habitat n'est pas idéal pour cette espèce et j'ai décidé de faire le demi-tour.
So in 2006, while he was surveying the central plateau of Madagascar, he was looking for the bird, and he realized that the habitat was not ideal for this species, so he was about to turn back.
En faisant le demi-tour, j'ai vu donc un oiseau à peu près à 500 mètres de nous qui vole au-dessus d'une colline et quelques secondes après, donc, l'oiseau est disparu dans l'autre côté du colline. Et après, donc, j'ai décidé de suivre, malgré la mauvaise route et l'habitat, j'ai décidé donc de suivre la direction pour voir l'espèce.
And so as he was about to turn back, he saw very far away on the horizon, like one of the buzzards he had been looking for, flying away over the mountain, and then that's how he decided to continue the investigation.
Et quand nous sommes arrivés donc sur le lieu où j'ai trouvé un individu en volant au-dessus de la colline, j'ai vu donc un couple de cette espèce avec une bonne marécage.
And so after seeing one individual, he was able to see a second one as a couple of individuals after looking again on the same location.
Et 3 mois après cette observation, j'ai décidé donc de retourner dans cet endroit pour voir les espèces forestières.
So 3 months later, he decided to come back to this specific location to study like the bird species living in this specific forest.
Et en arrivant dans ce lieu, j'ai vu donc un lac à l'intérieur de la forêt. C'est un lac volcanique et au moment où mes collègues donc, ont installé nos tentes, j'ai décidé de voir donc les espèces aquatiques qui sont présentes dans ce lac.
So he went with some local guides, and while they were setting the camp, he decided to go around and check the surroundings and see potential like birds living in this water area, on this volcanic lake that you can see on the screen.
Et après quelques observations, j'ai observé donc un canard aux yeux blancs et ce canard donc est classé disparu en 1993. Donc je suis un peu surpris donc de voir que ce canard donc n'est pas éteint.
And so as he was like surveying this lake, he could not believe what he saw. He saw this white-eyed duck that's called the Madagascar pochard. And this species was classified as extinct since 1993. It had not been seen, and it was here alive in front of him on this lake.
Et j'ai pris plusieurs photos et des films sur cette espèce pour confirmer donc sa présence.
And so he documented the sighting with some numerous like videos and pictures because it was a species known as extinct.
En parlant toujours donc des oiseaux d'eau, nous avons étudié donc trois espèces les plus menacées sur les oiseaux d'eau, dont l'huron malgache, le sac à la varelle et aussi le nom en anglais c'est slender-billed flufftail.
And so here's another like 3 species that he studied that we won't go into details, but that there is this white heron, the Sakalava rail, and the flufftail that he's holding in his hands.
Et un des espèces les plus marquantes dans ma vie aussi, c'est le tétras sombre. Et pendant le nouvel an de cette année, moi et mon collègue qui travaille donc sur l'American Bird Conserving ici à Madagascar, ici aux États-Unis, ont fait donc des expéditions dans la forêt nord de Madagascar et nous avons redécouvert donc cette espèce qui a été vue pour la dernière fois en 1999.
And so the last bird species Dr. Lily would like to mention is dusky tetraka that he was able to rediscover as early as New Year's Day this year with one of his colleagues that worked for the American Bird Conservancy. And this bird was last observed in 1999. And they rediscovered it this year on January 1st.
Et je demande donc mon collègue d'être debout pour que tout le monde puisse le voir.
And I think his colleague from the American Bird Conservancy is here.
Merci. Bien que je sois donc ornithologue, mes recherches ne sont pas limitées sur les oiseaux, mais j'ai observé plusieurs taxons pour faire la recherche.
So although he's an ornithologist, his research is not limited to birds, as he studies some reptiles and some lemurs.
Et quand nous avons fait donc des recherches sur les lémuriens, nous avons eu donc trouvé quelques espèces qui ne sont pas encore décrites pour la science. Donc je vais défiler donc ces espèces.
And some of these lemurs that you can see on the screen are species that are not yet described in scientific literature.
Et comme Monsieur le sénateur donc, nous a dit tout à l'heure sur l'espèce d'araignée, un collègue qui vient de Belgique a fait donc des recherches avec nous donc, dans la partie nord de Madagascar. Et il m'a donc donné le nom d'espèce de cette araignée comme Lily-Arison. Donc le genre c'est Catablès Lily-Arison et en anglais c'est Lily-Arison wolf spider.
So to honor all the efforts for conservation in Madagascar done by Dr. Lily, one of his colleagues gave his name for a new species of spider that was discovered in 2021.
Et malgré tout, la biodiversité à Madagascar est très menacée par la dégradation de l'habitat. Donc, plusieurs endroits à Madagascar sont dégradés.
So, despite all those conservation efforts, the biodiversity in Madagascar remains very endangered and threatened by habitat degradation.
Et c'est pour cette raison que nos anciens présidents ont pris donc une décision pour augmenter, pour tripler la surface des aires protégées à Madagascar, pour sauver la biodiversité.
And this is why the former president of Madagascar committed to tripling the size of protected areas in Madagascar and mandated NGOs to protect and to create those protected areas.
Ainsi, le projet Peregrine Fund a participé donc sur cet programme gouvernemental et jusqu'à maintenant donc le projet Peregrine Fund a créé 4 nouvelles aires protégées, dont 2 se trouvent donc dans le centre-ouest de Madagascar et 2 dans la partie nord de Madagascar.
So, as part of this project from the Madagascar government, this is the Peregrine Fund participated in the creation of 4 new protected areas in Madagascar, covering 200,000 hectares. 2 of them are located on the west of the island and 2 on the north side of the island.
Donc, je vais présenter ces 4 aires protégées. Donc, je vais commencer avec le site au centre-ouest de Madagascar, le complexe Tsimembu-Manambulmat.
So he's going to start with the first one, which is on the central west part of Madagascar and which is called the Tsimembo.
Cette aire protégée a une surface de 62 745 hectares et formée par 3 écosystèmes, la forêt chasse, les lacs et aussi les mangroves. Mais la spécificité de ces sites est la qualité de l'habitat. C'est la seule forêt chasse de Madagascar qui reste encore intacte jusqu'actuellement.
So this area is from a different environment. There is some mangrove, some lakes, but there is also a dry forest, which is very unique and one of the last remaining dry forest areas in Madagascar that's still in good conditions.
Et nous avons géré donc cette aire protégée avec la population locale et je vais parler donc après qu'est-ce que nous avons fait avec la population locale.
So this area, this is the area actually where Dr. Lily started his research in 1992, and part of all the efforts they've done have been done by working with local communities, and he'll talk about it a bit later.
La deuxième aire protégée est appelée Manrzou, située à 300 km de l'aire protégée de Tsimembu. Et cet endroit, donc, l'écosystème est caractérisé aussi par la forêt sèche et le lac et les mangroves. Et la surface est de 15 145 hectares. Et dans ce site aussi, il y a aussi donc d'aigles pêcheurs de Madagascar. Donc nous avons dupliqué nos expériences dans le premier site au deuxième site.
So the second area, which is called Mandrozo, which is like 300 kilometers on the north of the first one, is another one that is managed and that was created and managed by the Peregrine Fund. And you can also find fish eagles on this protected area, and so they were able to apply the same techniques that they deployed in the first area we talked about on this second one by leveraging on their experience.
La troisième aire protégée est appelée Bemanivk, qui a une surface de 35 605 hectares. Et ce site est caractérisé donc par la présence de forêts pluviales, 4 lacs volcaniques et des savanes.
So the third area is specific for being one of the few areas with intact rainforests, 4 volcanic lakes, and as well as some marshes within the forest.
Et dans cet endroit que j'ai donc redécouvert le filigule de Madagascar.
And it's in this area that he rediscovered the Madagascar pochard, which was a white-eyed duck we mentioned earlier.
La quatrième aire protégée est appelée Mahimrundr, qui a une surface de 75 163 hectares. Et cet endroit donc est caractérisé par la forêt qui se trouve donc à une altitude de 1850 mètres jusqu'à 2400 mètres. Et une caractéristique de la forêt de cet endroit, c'est que jusqu'à 2200 mètres d'altitude, on peut trouver donc des belles forêts d'une hauteur de 25 à 30 mètres de hauteur.
So the fourth area managed by the Peregrine Fund is called Mahimborondro, and it's an area with intact rainforest at a very high altitude. It's from 1,800 meters to 2,400 meters, and it's pretty rare to see at that altitude trees as tall as like 30 meters. So it's a very protected area because you can find some intact rainforest, altitude rainforest, which is pretty rare.
En parlant toujours donc l'aire protégée, je voudrais juste parler que le Peregrine Fund a participé aussi donc pour les collectes de données pour la création de cette aire protégée en 1997 en donnant plusieurs informations sur les espèces faunistiques. Et c'est pour cela que je vais parler un peu de la participation de Peregrine sur la création du parc Massoal qui a une surface de 230 000 hectares, où l'endroit où j'ai fait donc plusieurs années de recherche de 1992 en 2005.
So the last area, which is not directly created, run or managed by the Peregrine Fund, is pretty important because Dr. Lily has done a big part of his research there between 1992 and 2005, and it's an area where the Peregrine Fund has participated a lot in providing data and helping them develop this area. So it's not a Peregrine area, but it's they've been helping a lot, and it's a very important place for research.
Et je vais donc vous montrer quelles sont donc nos approches sur la protection de la biodiversité à Madagascar, surtout la gestion des aires protégées.
So now Dr. Lily is going to give us an insight on what are all the different techniques and what they've been doing in order to conserve those environments.
Un des points importants donc est le recrutement des techniciens locaux. Donc dans chaque nos aires protégées, nous avons recruté donc des gens locaux. Ça c'est pour avoir donc des confiances de leurs parents aux alentours des aires protégées.
So the first thing was the recruitment of local technicians, and the main thing it brings the trust from the local population.
Le deuxième point, c'est que nous avons donc eu une bonne relation avec les autorités locales.
The second important point is to have to build very good collaboration and relation with the local authorities, including the mayors of the small villages, which are like very much involved, as we spoke, with like splitting the fishing revenue, and so it's very important to have very good relationship with the local authorities.
Et nous avons travaillé aussi avec la population locale. Et à chaque fois que nous avons pris donc des décisions, ce n'est pas la décision à partir d'en haut qui va vers le bas, mais j'ai descendu donc sur terrain pour discuter avec la population locale, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire, et nous avons donné donc des idées, et après donc il y avait beaucoup de discussions, et c'est toujours donc une décision prise entre la population locale et nous que nous avons utilisé. C'est pour cela que nous n'avons pas donc des conflits avec la population locale aux alentours des aires protégées.
So directly involving the population, the local population, has been very important, and making sure that any decision they take doesn't come from the top to the bottom, but it's really from like by discussing any decision with the population before making them, and that's how you get, I mean, the local population buys into your project, basically.
Et nous avons impliqué aussi la population locale sur le suivi écologique participatif. Donc, nous avons donné donc des formations aux membres des associations pour faire le suivi, que ce soit des oiseaux ou des lémuriens dans la forêt.
And one of the ways to involve the local population was to involve them in the monitoring of the species on the site, I mean on the field, whether it's like the birds or the lemurs or the reptiles.
Nous avons sensibilisé aussi la population locale pour faire donc le programme de reforestation. Et le projet Peregrine Fund avec la communauté locale, nous avons donc planté chaque année environ 500 000 jeunes plants, dont le taux de survie de ces jeunes plants est de 75 à 80%.
So another way to involve the local population is through a big reforestation effort, and so every year they manage to plant 500,000 new trees with a pretty high survival rate of like 75 to 80%.
Toujours dans l'implication de la population locale, donc nous avons travaillé donc avec le ministère. Donc la direction régionale du ministère a donné des formations aux membres des associations pour faire le contrôle et des surveillances à l'intérieur de la forêt et aussi au niveau du lac.
So another action was by developing a pretty good relationship with the local authorities and the government for like training some of their staff for controlling and monitoring the preserved areas.
Un point fort aussi sur l'approche du Peregrine Fund est le respect de gestion traditionnelle. Ça joue un grand rôle donc sur la conservation des ressources naturelles à Madagascar. Beaucoup d'endroits donc à Madagascar ne respectent pas la tradition. C'est pour cela que les ressources naturelles sont totalement dégradées. Mais pour le projet Peregrine Fund, nous avons donc montrer à la population locale que même c'est nous donc qui respectent la tradition. Donc la gestion traditionnelle nous aide beaucoup donc à conserver les ressources naturelles à Madagascar.
So reinforcing the traditional forest management has been very important, because like in areas where you forget about the tradition, that's where the areas are most degraded. And so reinforcing, helping the communities go back to their traditional knowledge has been very important in preserving the forest environment.
Nous avons travaillé beaucoup aussi avec les secteurs socio-économiques aux alentours de chaque aire protégée.
So they've been working also closely with political and economic actors on the management of the natural resources in the areas they intended to protect.
Et nous avons travaillé beaucoup aussi avec les partenaires financiers nationaux et internationaux. Par exemple, si je vais montrer ici donc sur le diapo, c'est que dans la partie ouest de Madagascar, les pêcheurs donc avant utilisent le pirogue en bois, alors que seulement 2 ans donc la durée de l'utilisation. Donc les pêcheurs coupent encore d'autres d'autres grands arbres. Alors que, après avoir eu donc des collaborations avec des partenaires financiers, nous avons acheté donc des pirogues en fibre de verre qu'on peut utiliser de 16 à 18 ans.
So partnerships with national and international financial, institutions able to do financial donations are very important. And one example on the screens here is like fiberglass pirogues, because a wooden pirogue would last only 2 years. And so the local fishermen who need their pirogues to go fishing would have to cut new trees every 2 years to build new pirogues. And for example, here, Conservation International was able to finance the purchase of fiberglass pirogues that are much more, that last much longer than having to cut trees, which are part of the local ecosystem.
Donc voilà donc ma première ambition. Ma deuxième ambition, c'est d'améliorer donc le niveau de vie de la population. Donc sur ce point, donc nous avons discuté avec la population locale quels sont donc leurs besoins. Donc dans chaque partie des aires protégées, donc les besoins de la population locale changent d'un milieu à un autre. Donc pour la plupart, donc nous avons distribué des semences et des matériels agricoles pour la population locale.
So the second ambition, the first one was the conservation. The second one is how do you improve the living conditions of the local population? And there are several ways to do that, and we'll go through a few of them. One of them has been to distribute some seeds to the local population to help them to grow, to develop their agriculture.
Le second, c'est, comme je vous ai dit, chaque localité donc, a son besoin. Et dans certains endroits, il y a donc des gens qui s'intéressent avec la production du miel. Donc, nous avons travaillé donc, avec les consultants qui viennent de la capitale pour aller sur site pour donner des formations à la population locale.
So every community has different needs, and the one you can see on the screen is providing beekeeping training for some population, and they've been sending some specialists from the Madagascar capital to help train people on raising bees in their communities.
Et nous avons appuyé aussi l'association féminine. Il y en a donc plusieurs activités. Ici, donc, nous avons collaboré avec des docteurs vétérinaires pour donner donc, des formations à l'association féminine pour faire donc, l'activité de vaccination.
So they're also supporting women's association, and one of the ideas is to bring them new sources of income. As you can see here, they've been doing some veterinary training to help them raise geese and chickens, and like vaccine the birds, basically.
Et aussi, nous avons distribué aussi donc des machines à coudre à l'association féminine. Et pendant le problème de Covid, ces associations féminines donc ont produit donc des masques. Et le projet Peregrine Fund a acheté donc les masques à l'association féminine, et après nous avons distribué donc tous les masques à la population locale pour éviter donc l'effet de la Covid.
So another example of this support for women's association has been the donation by the Peregrine Fund of some sewing machines, which were then used by the local women to build some COVID masks that were then purchased back by the Peregrine Fund to give to the local population.
Et pour diminuer donc les dépenses des parents d'élèves, chaque année donc nous avons distribué des cahiers aux élèves aux alentours des aires protégées, mais au niveau de la couverture des cahiers, nous avons mis donc des photos des espèces menacées et aussi le nom de bailleurs, et il y a des messages pour les élèves sur la protection de la biodiversité.
So they've also distributed some kits to the kids in school with some like explanations and pictures of the endangered species, and each kit has been designed to fit the specific birds and animal that the children can encounter in the specific area where they live in Madagascar.
Nous avons essayé aussi donc de sensibiliser et de former la population locale pour utiliser donc le type de four pour diminuer donc l'utilisation de bois de chauffe.
So they've been also training the population in designing and building some much more efficient wood burning ovens in order to reduce the consumption of wood from the forest.
Nous avons construit aussi donc des puits et jusqu'à maintenant donc 50 puits ont été construits aux alentours de l'aire protégée pour que la population locale puisse avoir donc des eaux potables.
And so another example is like the building of 50 wells around the protected areas to give good water access to the people and put less strain on the lake.
J'ai aussi insisté beaucoup avec la population locale. Donc, j'ai expliqué les fonctions écosystémiques. Et ça nous aide beaucoup donc, à protéger les ressources naturelles. Donc, je vais prendre donc 3 exemples que nous avons faits donc, sur la population locale. Le premier, c'est à l'ouest de Madagascar, sur la gestion des lacs. Donc, nous avons écrit donc, des règles pour appliquer à la gestion. Au début, donc, les pêcheurs ne sont pas contents. Mais après avoir eu donc plusieurs explications, ils ont vu que, ils sont convaincus, vu que chaque année, donc, les pêcheurs ont obtenu environ 600 tonnes de poissons.
So another very important way to get the people's support is to also explain them the ecosystem and the way it works. And one of the examples here is like for the lake management. And if you explain to the fishermen how the lake works and how to manage the fish population, they can be winners. And for example, on one of these lakes, it's 600 tons of fish that are caught every year in a sustainable fashion.
Le deuxième exemple sur l'importance de la conservation des ressources naturelles, comme j'ai expliqué aussi à la population locale, c'est la présence des sources d'eau à partir de l'aire protégée. Et ces sources d'eau, donc, dans la partie nord de Madagascar, a irrigué environ 10 000 hectares de terrains rizicoles.
So another example is through like there is a bunch of water sources in the protected areas that are used for irrigation downhill outside of the protection area. And if you explain to the people how important protecting those water sources is, they directly benefit from it because it helps irrigating 10,000 hectares of rice field, which is the main crop grown in Madagascar.
Le troisième exemple, c'est la construction des centrales hydroélectriques à partir de sources d'eau qui viennent donc de la forêt. Donc, ils ont eu donc d'électricité au niveau de 2 villages aux alentours de l'aire protégée. Donc, j'ai expliqué aux gens que si vous n'avez pas donc détruit la forêt, vous aurez pour la génération future des avantages à partir de fonctions écosystémiques. Et actuellement, donc, toutes les populations sont convaincues sur l'importance de la conservation de la biodiversité. C'est pour cela qu'elles sont donc très actifs sur le programme de réforestation.
And a final example is building of hydroelectricity, which also relies on the water sources that are originated from the protected areas. And that's all those examples are very important because that's how you get the local population to support it by understanding that by supporting the protected areas, it's an investment for them for their sustainability on the long run.
Le dernier point, donc, c'est la sécurisation foncière. Avant, donc, la population est très peur donc, au projet. Elle pense que le projet donc, va augmenter donc, la surface des aires protégées pour prendre leur terrain. Et après, donc, nous avons reçu un financement d'un bailleur pour avoir donc le titre des terrains de la population locale et à partir de la distribution de cartes foncières, elle a plus motivé donc d'augmenter donc la culture aux alentours dans son terrain.
So the last example is related to land security. So all those local population, they actually own the land they work in and they live in. But when they see a protected area that's expanding next to them, they're worried that at some point their land is going to be taken away from them. And so one of the big efforts of Peregrine has been to financially help those local population securing actual titles for the land that they own, and by actually owning a title for your land, suddenly you know you're not going to be, the land is not going to be taken away from you by the extension of the protected area, and that's how you build the trust with those communities. And like 40 titles were secured, and you can see like all the official people, all the mayor and official people from the capital coming to the title ceremony, where like those inhabitants receive the title for their land.
Ma troisième ambition, comme je vous ai dit, donc, c'est la formation des étudiants. Ça, c'est une étudiante de Peregrine Fund qui a fait donc son doctorat sur l'étude des caméléons dans la partie nord de Madagascar.
And so the final ambition, as we mentioned earlier, the final ambition is the training of successors, which is very important as part of the Peregrine project and Lily's entire career. And one of them is involved like field supervision and training, for instance, regarding data collection.
Donc, nous avons commencé donc à créer des clubs environnementaux dans les villages aux alentours des aires protégées. Et jusqu'à maintenant, donc, nous avons créé 33 clubs environnementaux et nous avons montré donc aux enfants l'importance de la biodiversité dans chaque nos 4 aires protégées.
And so they're helping students, but they're also helping and working with the kids, and they created those environmental clubs throughout Madagascar, and the goal is really to explain to the kids how the protection of the ecosystem is vital also for them.
Et j'ai encadré donc les étudiants de l'université à partir d'explications de la méthodologie sur le terrain, la collecte des données et l'analyse des résultats. Donc, une approche que j'ai utilisée donc avec les étudiants et d'avoir donc une bonne relation avec les étudiants. Donc, les étudiants donc sont très motivés, même le problème de la difficulté sur le terrain donc se produit surtout dans la partie nord de Madagascar. Les étudiants sont toujours actifs donc sur la collecte des données. Donc, j'ai dépensé beaucoup de temps donc sur le terrain pour donner toutes les techniques ou toutes les méthodologies pour collecter des données.
So he's bring a lot of students directly on the field, especially to collect data and to teach them the data collection methodologies. And one of the very important way for this to be successful was creating great relation with the students and ensure they were having like a great time and speaking to them as equal. And that's how he got them very motivated in pursuing those dreams.
Et après la collecte des données sur le terrain, j'ai assisté aussi à tous les étudiants sur la rédaction jusqu'à la soutenance. Donc ici, j'ai participé à la soutenance d'un de nos étudiants pour son doctorat. Et jusqu'à maintenant, donc, j'ai encadré 90 étudiants en master, 16 étudiants en doctorat et 2 dans le cadre de professeurs.
And so he's been working and supervising and helping students all the way throughout the entire studies. And out of it came like 90 master degrees, 16 PhDs and 2 professorships.
Donc, pour résumer donc, mes 3 ambitions, je vais passer donc, de donner jusqu'à maintenant, donc, pendant les 31 ans de mes activités de recherche, nous avons découvert donc 4 espèces. Nous avons redécouvert 4 espèces. Nous avons créé 4 aires protégées qui totalisent donc 200 000 hectares. Mais comme nous avons assisté aussi à la création de l'aire protégée dans le nord-est de Madagascar, qui est de 230 000 hectares, c'est pour cela que j'ai mis donc 5 aires protégées avec 430 000 hectares. Et nous avons travaillé donc avec 28 associations locales. Et j'ai donc encadré 108 étudiants pour devenir des leaders en conservation. Et nous avons appliqué donc la conservation communautaire à Madagascar. Et maintenant, donc, cette approche, le Peregrine Fund à Boise donc, a utilisé à Panama pour mettre aussi cette technique.
Can we go back to the previous one? So just to summarize all the achievement Dr. Lily has done throughout his like 31-year career so far. So he's rediscovered 4 species, discovered 4 species, participated in the creation of 4 protected areas for peregrine, plus a 5th one that is not peregrine, but where they have been very involved. They've helped create 28 local associations, helped 108 graduate students graduate, and they did also where they were able to export all the approach they developed in Madagascar to other areas where the Peregrine Fund is active, especially in Panama.
Et quelles seront donc les prochaines activités? Donc la première activité, ce que j'ai pensé de faire donc, c'est la recherche de la biodiversité sur la forêt de montagne. Jusqu'à maintenant, donc, très peu de données donc, sur la biodiversité de montagne. Donc, je vais essayer de connaître donc, quels seront donc, les écosystèmes utilisés, les micro-habitats utilisés par les espèces, vu que la plupart des forêts de basse altitude sont déjà dégradées.
So part of the next steps in his career is the research on mountain forest biodiversity, especially as the issue is that lower altitude forests are already very degraded in Madagascar. So he's going to spend time studying like mountain forest as one of his goals.
La deuxième activité est d'assurer donc la conservation des espèces. C'est pas la conservation des oiseaux, mais je pense de voir donc quelles seront donc les approches pour conserver toute la biodiversité à Madagascar.
So the second point is like beyond birds, his goal is to also ensure the conservation of all the threatened biodiversity, not only the birds, but like any animal.
La troisième activité est de continuer donc à soutenir la population locale pour qu'elle puisse donc diminuer donc la dépendance avec les ressources naturelles.
And finally, it's to continue supporting the local population in reducing their dependence on the local natural resources.
Et la dernière activité donc est de continuer à supporter donc les étudiants pour devenir des relèves en conservation, c'est-à-dire pour devenir des leaders de conservation.
And the last step is to continue developing leadership among students to create the next generation of conservationists and leaders.
Et tous les résultats ne sont pas donc eu le jour aujourd'hui sans l'appui de plusieurs partenaires. Depuis 1992 jusqu'à actuellement, donc, nous avons reçu plusieurs financements des différents partenaires. Donc, j'aimerais de remercier ici aujourd'hui.
So nothing would have been possible without the support of all the partners that you can see on the screen, and he would like to really thank all those partners for all their participation in this research and conservation project.
Et avant de terminer donc ma présentation et aussi avant de vous poser des questions, j'aimerais juste présenter un film sur la partie ouest de Madagascar. Et je m'excuse ici, donc ça c'était en 2017 et mon anglais n'est pas très bon, donc j'espère que vous vous comprenez donc ce que je vais parler, mais ce que j'aimerais vous montrer donc la qualité de l'habitat où nous avons géré dans l'une des 4 aires protégées.
And finally, before moving to the Q&A, I'd like to show you a small movie from 2017. And he apologizes because he speaks English in the movie, and he feels I think it's okay. I think it's great.
This site is totaling 62,745 hectares and formed by 3 ecosystems. Is a dry forest, lakes and mangroves. This site is unique as is the best wetland left here in Madagascar. We can see more threatened water birds, more threatened raptors, more species on lemurs, more species on bats, and micro mammals, and different species. This area is very important because here is the best area for Madagascar fish eagle. Madagascar fish eagle is one endemic raptors in Madagascar and classified as the 5 rarest raptors in the world. The species stay at the high level of food chain, so protecting one animal at the high level of food chain makes to protect all of the biodiversity below. It's very rare in Madagascar to see this kinds of habitat, ecosystem like this. One big problem here in Madagascar is the habitat destruction. If dry forest is destroyed, it's very hard to make it again. The degradation of ecosystems makes the extinction of many species. But our challenge is how to protect the biodiversity. Nefa nisy nisy tapaka igny. My name is Rene de Roland Lily-Arison. I began to be with Peregrine Fund here in Madagascar in 1992. Here at the site is the best area to have more population of this species. That's why we have studied the biology and ecology of Madagascar fish eagle at this site. As this lake used by Madagascar fish eagle, used also by fishermen. To protect the Madagascar fish eagle, we have collaborated with local communities and we created association to protect the biodiversity and also to improve livelihood of the local communities. We recruited all of the local technicians from the villages surrounding this protected area. This process gave the trust from the local communities. That's why we have good success to manage this area.
The camp, its name is Ankivarivai. It was built in 1992. For the staff, we have 11 technicians here. So we have many works here, like survey, like protected areas creation, like monitoring.
Okay. We did the monitoring 3 times a year. The first is during the beginning of breeding season to check if there are eggs, and also when there are nestlings at the nest and how many nestlings are able to leave the nest.
Iakarana mihitsy anihina fa misy fomba fagnaniha azy manao tady dia iakarana jusqu'à an-tranony eo jerena hoe ino moa zava-misy ato, mbo atody ma izy ato sa fa zanany sa fa fohy fa mitily na hoe lamoka, tsy maintsy jerena le izy fa tsy hoe atao tombatombana avao fa mila jerena maso tanteraky. Lasa fa mifakazatsy be aminy zany zahay, fa hainy avao hoe olo reto olo miaro anay magnara-maso anay, zahay hainy I hainay matsaka sy andavany, lasa mifakahay zany zay mifakazo am-poky.
I have a dream for our futures, our generations, because if we don't protect these areas, this environment, I think that all of this environment at this moment will disappear. I hope that our work for the protection environment will be continued for another 50 years.
I am here with my son to show him his father has done a big effort on conservation. And this point is very important to transfer to him, as he will have also a task to continue on conservation for the future generation. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for your listening.
So we're going to take some questions from the audience. I'm going to have to come around with the mic because we are streaming this. But I think we all feel incredibly fortunate to have you with us, Lily, tonight. Our man on the ground in Madagascar, I don't know what we'd do without you and without the Peregrine Fund for supporting everything that you've done and all of the other people that cooperated with you in order to accomplish your goals. So it's just amazing. So I know I have some questions out here. Okay, I have questions online. So, Joyce says, have you had suggestions about, let's see, she had suggested the idea to a woman who worked with conserving lemurs some years ago about putting in hydroponics and things like that and aquaculture so that maybe the forests and the devastation wouldn't occur. So it would be sort of like tented farming. Do they have any of that in Madagascar? It's a way of growing food instead of constantly cutting down more forests in greenhouses.
Merci pour la question. Il y a un projet qui a fait l'application de cette méthode, le MBP ou Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership, qui travaille sur le lémurien à Madagascar. Donc, ce projet donc, a utilisé cette méthode, mais nous sommes consacrés donc notre activité sur la gestion communautaire et sur la recherche, surtout pour la recherche biologique sur les oiseaux et aussi, comme je vous ai dit tout à l'heure, sur l'inventaire et le suivi écologique de toutes les autres espèces.
So, Dr. Lily is aware of such initiative on using basically greenhouses to grow food instead of using the forest resources to protect lemurs. But his specific research is more like on building something with the communities and learning how to really, protect the ecosystem.
Et comme je vous ai dit, il y a un organisme MVP, Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership.
So there is one organism called Madagascar Biodiversity Organism Partnership that's been using this methodology. I think there is a question.
Okay, there's one.
You.
I just had a quick question. You mentioned that there was a good model that you developed for community conservation, and I was wondering, how do you distribute that model? You mentioned that there was like 100 organizations that had spread it, but I was wondering, like, what methods do you use for distributing that model to other communities?
Le premier, c'est que nous avons donc publié quelques articles sur les modèles que nous avons déjà faits. Et aussi à Madagascar, donc, nous avons fait beaucoup d'échanges avec les autres gestionnaires de l'aire protégée. Ça c'est dans le but de partager donc, nos expériences.
So first they've published a lot of articles and papers about it. And then they've also collaborated very closely with other organizations managing other protected areas in Madagascar.
Over here.
People in North America are familiar with the fund because of two popular books, The Last Song of the Dodo and The Gardens of Mars. Both books mention the fund. And what I was wondering is, in your community outreach, I was wondering if you could speak on the devil's in the details in making those programs efficient. I was wondering if you had any problems with jealousy among when you help one community, does another ethnic group or another part of the community become jealous? I'm also worried, I wanted you to speak on the efficiency of programs that try to change human behavior, particularly the collection of firewood. I understand you're invested in stove projects, but I was also wondering if you think like a project that brings health clinics into being, like Habitat, I think Harmony and Health is one of the organizations that works in Madagascar, but the other organizations that I've been able to at least learn about are Blue Ventures and Seology. And I'm wondering if you've had any interaction with these nonprofits and if you find their work respectable.
So let me try to summarize. Donc, il y avait une question. Il dit que la plupart des gens aux États-Unis connaissent le Peregrine Fund parce qu'il y a eu ce livre qui a été écrit sur le dodo. Et il voulait savoir si quand vous créez, quand vous aidez une communauté, ça peut créer de la jalousie auprès d'autres communautés. Ça, c'est une première question. Deuxième question, c'était est-ce que c'était toutes les approches qui visent à changer le comportement des gens, comment c'est reçu.
Yeah, merci pour la question. Donc, je vais répondre donc, pour la première question. Les activités de la pêche se trouvent donc dans la partie ouest de Madagascar. Et la plupart des gens donc, sont des pêcheurs. Donc, nous avons créé donc, une petite réglementation pour la gestion du lac. Et aussi, comme je vous ai dit tout à l'heure, donc, il y a aussi la gestion traditionnelle. Donc, l'ouverture et la fermeture de la pêche, de la saison de la pêche, n'est pas liée, donc, ne suit pas donc la date de l'ouverture du ministère de la Pêche. Mais c'est la date donnée par le chef de coutume. Donc, toute la population donc, est inclus sur l'activité de la pêche. Donc, il n'y a pas de jalousie entre les pêcheurs. Et aussi, nous avons aussi fait donc, des suivis d'arbres utilisés par chaque pêcheur. Donc, nous avons utilisé la méthode de Fisherman Impact. Donc, sur chaque campement de pêcheurs, nous avons collecté donc, des données sur le bois de chauffe utilisé par chaque pêcheur. Donc, il y a une bonne réglementation utilisée par tous les pêcheurs. Et la deuxième question, c'est...
So on the potential jealousies between the different communities, so as Dr. Lily mentioned, all the approach is from the bottom up, meaning like everything is discussed with local communities. And for example, the date you're authorized to start fishing, it's not coming from the government, it's coming from every single local community. So that's how you manage not creating any tension or jealousy, because it's not the decision come from the bottom and not from the up. And regarding your question regarding the changing, how do you make people change behavior and accept? On the specific example of the wood burning ovens, they've studied the kind of wood that is used by every specific community and village, and different kind of fishermen on different lakes may use different kind of woods. And so they really tailor-made their approach to every specific community, and that's how they manage to get the population to buy into the approach.
Et aussi sur les changements de la mentalité, nous avons appliqué donc l'approche sur le système d'appartenance. C'est pour cela que nous avons impliqué donc toute la population locale, que ce soit sur le suivi et le contrôle, et aussi il y a le suivi écologique et le contrôle et la surveillance des ressources naturelles. Donc, le changement d'utilisation de systèmes d'appartenance a un rôle très important pour la gestion.
And the final thing to help change the behaviors, it's very important to create a very strong sense of belonging for those people, and that's why all the conservation approach is focused at creating this acceptation and creating this feeling of belonging. I mean, people, it's their own project. They're protecting their own environment, their own food resource.
Okay, because we went a little long tonight, we're not going to take any more questions. Dr. Lily is going to hang around and answer some of them later on. But I'd like to ask everybody to just stay seated for the next few minutes while I thank everyone here and while I thank Dr. Lily and present you with an Explorers Club cap. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Bryce, for being a wonderful interpreter. I see a future for you at the UN. And I'd like all of the Peregrine Fund also to come up here because we are grateful to all of you for funding Lily and making this all possible tonight. So come on up. And if everybody could just stay seated for another minute. And I think we're ready to go, guys. Again, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for Teddy, and thank you, Teddy. Thank you, Brian, for bringing those incredible birds with you.
And get in there, hold on. Yes, go. Yeah, come on, I'll take that. Hostess with the mostest. Yes. Okay, right here. Thank you, everybody right here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't get to ask my questions. I'm going to have your chance, please. First of all, thank you so much for what you're doing on so many levels.
Sure, you understand. I don't need to translate this.
I want to make sure he doesn't bring it.
Thank you for everything. Merci pour tout ce que vous faites.
Everything on so many levels.